From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John. I'm coming at you from the local Michigan area. Today, we're on the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. We are going to be having a little more of a laid-back conversation with some beers. Before we get into that, though, I'm bring on my comrade Sean. Sean, how you doing today?
I'm a little anti-Russia right now, John. So if you just call me your cohort, I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm sticking with comrade now that you got mad about it last week. So I'm doing pretty good. A little bit of a weird week, but hanging in there. What's going on with you?
Not too much. We're having a little bit of a different kind of show today, aren't we?
Yeah. So one of the things we talked about in our intro podcast is we wanted to be able to still talk about things like beer and so on, which we both have quite a bit of experience with. So today we are going to talk about beer. I don't know how interesting it would be to just hear us talk about a beer, or in this case, two beers for 30 to 40 minutes, maybe an hour, however long we decide to go. So we're going to just kind of, mix in some topics with everything, kind of see where the conversation goes and kind of let things roll from there.
Yeah. And this was kind of a thing that we had talked about. We wanted to kind of start to maybe centralize or focus when we do these kind of beer episodes, these beer podcasts or whatnot, to focus on a specific brewery. So we decided this week to go with Eastern Market Brewing Company out of Detroit.
I would say this is probably one of our more liked, if not one of our favorites in the Michigan brewery scene. I'm sure we'll be doing a video for the mandatory videos. They're mandatory. The mandatory Michigan brewery series on them at some point. But I wanted to. I think I was the one who coined this one or picked this brewery to start with because I grabbed their beer. It's called Umbrella Weather. It is a American wheat beer with orange peel. I don't know what I'm reading the hops. Yeah, Mandarina. Basically, it's a wheat ale with orange peel in it. So I'm expecting it to be kind of in the same ballpark as like a Oberon style beer,
right?
Which is pretty popular this time of year. So I figured, why not give it a try and see how it goes.
Yeah, you kind of sold me on trying this one out because I think I knew they were releasing it, but it was one that I was like, they have like Hawaiian shirt weather. They have, like sweater weather, which is their winter one. They have, it's like a stout. Then they have this one. So they're kind of going with this weather theme, and it kind of follows the same kind of labeling that they do. I don't know what the date on yours is. Mine's March 3rd.
Mine is, where'd it go? Also March 3rd. So probably the same batch.
Apples to apples.
Yeah.
Whenever I try to open a can slowly, I feel like I have to be like Hercules. You don't want to pop it too hard and have it blow up all over the place, but you kind of want to do it slow and savor that a little bit, that sound.
You want that good ASMR on it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's definitely less cloudy than what I expected out of a wheat beer. Less cloudy than, if we're comparing it to Oberon, which I don't know, that's what we should or shouldn't do. It's definitely less cloudy than that. On the nose, though, it's got a nice freshness to it.
Yeah, it's both our first shot at this, so it's hard to say if it is a kind of Oberon-esque kind of deal.
About to find out.
Yeah, it does have a nice orangey aroma, so you definitely get that on the nose.
Yeah, it's I'm getting more of the wheat out of it than I am the orange, for sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit hoppier, a little bit more bitter than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, I kind of expected it to be a little sweeter, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of lean into that orange peel a little bit more. That might not be a bad thing, though. I mean, one thing with Oberon, if you have enough of them, it's definitely a beer that can kind of sneak up on you and make you not feel too good the next day because it is so sweet and in some ways so much sugar in it from the oranges. This feels a little drier on the back end, so
yeah, absolutely
could be easier to maybe have two or three. I didn't float an orange in mine. That might help it too. If you're okay with putting fruit in your beer, it doesn't bother me. Do whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm not against that. Yeah, I feel like I don't know if you get this, but with wheat ales or wheat beers like an Oberon, for example, or like a Blue Moon or something along those lines, I feel like if I have too many of them, they really dehydrate me, and they really, like you were saying, the next day, I don't know if it's necessarily the sweetness or if it's just the big wheat component of it. It just, I have a killer headache either later in the day after drinking it or the next day. It seems like it's always like a really pronounced, almost, I could be confusing with a hangover, but it's like a head splitting headache kind of deal, even the same day sometimes.
Yeah, so I don't usually do more than the only time I ever do more than one or two wheat ales in a day is if it's, we're in Michigan, you're at a party or something, Oberon is what they have, then fine. I'll drink it at that point. But normally once I have one, maybe two wheat beers, I'm on to something else. I don't really feel the need to kind of continuously go back to them.
Yeah. I've noticed also after the next couple drinks that I've had of this, it does come across a little sweeter. It's like once my palate has adjusted to that bitterness that's in there initially, that kind of orange peel bitterness, it does start to kind of sweeten out a little bit. I mean, it's not overly sweet still, but it seems like it's kind of leveled out.
Yeah, it does kind of peak out a little bit once it opens up a little. Might just be the air kind of hitting it and oxidizing it a little bit, but I don't know, it's a nice beer. It's I mean, really, this is kind of what I would expect from Eastern Market. It's nice. It's refreshing. It is by no means challenging or offensive in any stretch. It's if you threw me one of these on a boat or like on the beach or something like that, I'd be perfectly content. I'd have no problem drinking this.
Yeah, I don't know if we mentioned it, but it's just 5.5%. So it's a little bit of a crusher. You don't have to, you can have a couple of these, not really, it shouldn't set you back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you want to have a 15% wheat ale. That would probably be so.
I'd be willing to try it and be interested, but
I've tried a couple. It's usually so. This one's not quite that high. Are you familiar with CJ's Brewing?
Yeah. Is it in Commerce?
Yeah. Well, they got one in Commerce and they got one in
Plymouth,
but the main one is in Commerce. Have you had their summer brew?
I'm sure I have. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've had it a couple times.
It's a lot like what Soul Sun used to be. At least that's what I think of. It's been forever since I've had Soul Sun, but it's that high. I want to say it's like 9.5, 10% as far as the ABV on it, and it is super sweet. And it's basically if you don't want to call it Soul Sun, we usually call it Old Baron clone before they made it more successful. What's funny about it is, that brewery is right off a golf course and it's right in the middle of Commerce where it's just townies all over the place. And if you go in there on any given summer weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter what day, you see people just like red-faced and shit-faced just from that. Just they'll drink like 30 of them and just get annihilated in that bar. And every time I see it, I'm like, hey, we go there because it's relatively close to home and they got good pizza and they got good food. Their beer's fine.
It's serviceable.
It's not something that, it's not Eastern Market or something like that, but it's not supposed to be. But just watching people just get totally like annihilated on that and then try to stagger out is always worth the price of admission. So
I think red-faced is a perfect descriptor for that. That's a good one.
Well, especially, you add in the sunburn that they have because they've been sitting on a golf course all day.
Right.
They're already dehydrated when they get there, and then they throw a 10-ish% wheat beer on top of it.
Yeah, that place, like you were saying, it's the beer's fine. It's not anything to write home about, but it's like Samuel L. Jackson beer. It'll get you drunk. But yeah, the food's really good, and that place, like you said, it's kind of like it's like a local hangout. Like it's a nice place. It's not like a dump. It's not a dive, but it's almost always very busy.
I kind of have a soft spot for that place because I got my like lifelong Mug Club membership there before all the other breweries popped up in the area. Like when I got my Mug Club membership there, they were the only brewery in the area. So it made their beer taste a lot better because there was nothing to really compare it to. The things they get right, like their beer from a craft perspective is still really affordable. Like when you go in there and get a pint of, I don't know how I will say tier 1 beer. I don't think they have a tier 2 or much of one, but you get like one of their normal beers, you're looking at like a $3.50 beer. So, all right, this isn't the best thing in the world, but it's $3.50, which is pretty damn good by, hell, I can't get a PBR half the time for $3.50 anymore.
Yeah, it's not a bad price.
Right.
And they have been around for like forever, a long time.
Yeah, I moved out to the Lakes area about a year after I graduated high school, so like 2002, and they were open and always busy at that point. So, yeah, they've been here going strong.
Yeah, and then they had what was it, like Genopolis or something it's at the USA. Is that the USA training facility or whatever on Beck Road? It used to be CompuWare. Yeah, like that's where the Plymouth Whalers used to play.
I used to go watch the Whalers and get just lit up on their beer because I saw the last time I was there, when the last season the Whalers were there, we watched Connor McDavid and Tyler Bertuzzi beat the brains in of the Whalers. They won by like 14 goals. It was great.
That's like I don't know. You kind of reminded me just this past since we're recording this, just this past Friday was opening day, and it's kind of been like a bit of a tradition to either go to the game, which that's been actually a while now for me, or to, you know, go out to the bar or go someplace and meet up with some people and have some beers. And that's always like sports and drinking a couple beers, having a couple pops. That's always a good time. I mean, unless I've been overserved, I don't think I've had too many rough times at either Comerica or Little Caesars. Now, actually, I've never even been at Little Caesars, but when they used to play the Joe,
it's
or
pronounced the Pizza Arena.
Is that what it is officially?
That's what I'm calling it.
Okay.
I'm really
get on board with that.
I'm really pushing to make it a thing. It is the Pizza Arena.
I'm just disappointed they didn't they like not light up the Little Caesar on top of it? Weren't they supposed to do that in like LEDs, and they didn't do it? He's on there, but it's not lit up.
The original concepts they had when it was coming out, the roof had, it was almost like a projection thing, because they had it as like a Red Wings logo for a while in the concepts, and then when the Pistons signed on to go there, they had Pistons logos up there, and then I want to say they had like a Gordie Howe picture up there around the time that he passed, and then when they got to the actual arena, it's just the pizza guy just painted on the roof.
Caesar.
Yeah. I don't think he lights up though. Yeah,
maybe I'm misremembering. I think when you mentioned the projection, that makes more sense.
Yeah, but I mean that arena's, I don't know. I've been to it probably total of like somewhere between 8 and 10 times now for various hockey games. Never been there for a basketball game yet, but I've been to a bunch of hockey games, and it just doesn't have that feel. I miss that old barn. Like I know this place is a shithole, but it's my shithole. You know. I don't know, maybe if they could get good and make some memories in there, it will change. But lately, whenever I've been there, we're losing by like 5 goals by the end of the second. I'm like, I guess we can go walk around the stadium and find something else to do, because this ain't doing it.
I got a chance this weekend to go out to Ferndale Project, which is the sister, brewery to Eastern Market out in Ferndale. And it's the first time I've only been there. I was there once or twice when they were Axel, like before Eastern Market bought them. And I remember one of the times I went to Axel's when they were doing their barrel age stuff. They had, one of them was Wolf Tone. That was the first one they did, and I bought a couple bottles of that. But they just recently like kind of reopened. They renovated the whole space. It's got like a real theme of like this side's the coffee side, and then this side's like the brewery side, and that's a really nice place. Like I don't necessarily like. So I was kind of surprised, and I'll preface what I'm going to say with this. I don't like standing for counter service. Like if I go and sit at the bar, I'm sitting at the bar because I want to be served. Like I don't want to have to stand in line. I mean, not like I feel like I'm above anything. It's just I'm lazy as hell. So I want to just sit at the bar and drink beer and just somebody say, hey, you need another one? Yeah, give me another one.
It's one of the benefits of sitting at the bar.
Yeah, that's like one of the few reasons to do it. So I thought it was really surprising. My buddy and I went there, and I'm like, oh, there's a couple spots at the bar. We'll go sit up there. And we sat there for a while, and the guy was just kind of like, oh, yeah, you got to go, like the guy working the bar that kept walking by us. Yeah, you got to go over to the register to order. I was like, oh, okay, thanks. Thanks for the heads up. Mm-hmm. But I just thought that was kind of weird. Like I'm sitting here and you're right there, and you're not really like serving anybody right now because there's nobody at the register. So can't you just bend the rules and serve me while I'm sitting here? Because I'm really lazy.
Yeah, I know they've been more strict. I'm sure that's still a COVID thing, because I've been there. I went there a few times over the last 2 years in summer. Our mutual friend Zach lives right over there, so I've met him up there a couple times for beers, and we went in there, and this must have been last summer, because I went in there and I didn't drive. My buddy picked me up and we went out there, and because of that I forgot a mask, because usually I just leave them in the car and don't even think about it. So I didn't have one, and he did, surprisingly. So I got like half a step in and had like 3 people yelling at me like I was some kind of heretic. Right. I was like, whoa. I literally had my hands up like, whoa, I forgot my mask. I will buy one from you. Just let me purchase one. And, like I wasn't trying to make a big deal about it. Like I was just like, look, I didn't even go into why I didn't have the thing with me. It didn't really matter. The way they flipped out. And again, they were all outside at this point. Everything was open air. They had all their storm windows up. As far as COVID goes, I guess you're about as safe as you can be, whatever that's worth. But yeah, you would have thought I went in there like punching a baby or something. But I mean, they do so much right at that, and we're not really talking about Ferndale Project right now. That we just mutually agree that we want to save that just to have an excuse to talk about it at another time.
Right.
Did you get a chance to try? They had I wanted to get down there this weekend. I didn't have the time. They have a gin barrel sour on this weekend that was only on draft in the tap room.
I don't think I even saw that.
So they posted about it on, I want to say Thursday.
Mhm.
So, and I think you were in there on Saturday.
Yeah, we went on Saturday.
It could have blown by the time you got there. For all I know.
I don't remember seeing anything like that up there.
I wanted to something different. Like I can only think of a handful of gin barrel beers that I've tried and only one that I've liked.
Mm.
And even that beer, I didn't like it that much in previous years or vintages, I guess, of the beer. Just I've liked it this past year. I think the idea of doing a gin barrel sour, though, I mean, gin varies so wildly from barrel to barrel, more so than bourbon does or whiskey does, could really make some interesting flavor profiles. So it was kind of bummed that I wasn't getting. I'm sure it's gone by now, or it will be by this weekend.
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a drinking escapade this weekend with like I said, with opening day, and we went to Brown Iron. Have you ever been to Brown Iron in Royal Oak? Or either?
I've driven by it like a billion times, but I haven't gone in.
I've only had, well, besides at the restaurant, but prior to that, I'd only really had their beer at like beer fests. Like I think the Grand Rapids Beer Fest, one of the years.
Do they do their own beer too, or are they just?
They do, and
Okay.
it's actually surprisingly like. I think of a place like that serves, they have like 64 taps or something. So I think of a place like that
Hopcat, or like Hopcat was when Hopcat wasn't whatever they are now.
Yeah, I mean, I think of a place like that has other beers and then they serve their own. I think of like Granite City, where it's like,
but
you don't really want to drink much of the beer that they have. You want to drink the stuff that they have, from other places. But I don't know if I should admit this. I probably had 5 or 6 beers on Friday, and stayed with the lower stuff, the 5-6%. And I think half of the things that I had were Brown Iron beers, and they were really good. Like I was really surprised. They had a couple like almost like I want to say like pastry / like dessert style stout. So like a turtle stout or like a peanut butter cup kind of deal. And they were all low ABV, but they were really tasty, which I was really surprised by. And they just had such a really great selection of just beer overall. It's really surprising.
Yeah, I still need to get out there. I'm always interested in a peanut butter beer because I'm sure you would agree with this. They are either super good and hits or just utterly terrible. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of in between with them. That's cool to hear that you got them like that and they were lower ABV. That's always interesting.
Yeah, I've got a love hate with this. I've got a love hate with peanut butter and beer. So
yeah,
if you can do it good at all, that's impressive to me.
I feel like I could count the ones I've had that are good on probably both hands. Because I have a total love for peanut butter outside of beer. Like if you told me, listen, fat ass, you're going to live on a jar of peanut butter for the rest, like all you can have is peanut butter for the rest of your life. I mean, I wouldn't like that, but I could think of worse ways to have to, survive.
I could survive. I mean, it might be a little challenging after a while, but I think for a while, I'd be good for a little bit.
Be like, can I have crackers or something to put it on or
no
bread? Right.
As long as it's crunchy, I'm good. I'm a big crunchy peanut butter fan.
I like both. If I had to survive off it and solely that, I'd probably go with crunchy just to have some kind of texture there.
Yeah, we never had crunchy as a kid, so that's always like a nice little treat I get for myself.
But yeah,
couldn't afford the nuts.
Is it a different price? I don't even notice.
I don't know. Maybe it's probably cheaper.
Yeah, it's less work to make it. But yeah, I haven't gotten up to Brown Iron, so I when they opened, I shouldn't say when they opened. They were around for a while before the world ended, and I just never made it up there. And then I've wanted to go up there a few times, but it's unless we have some other reason to be in that area, it's hard to like say, hey, let's go into Royal Oak and just have dinner and turn around.
No, you'd be there for a few hours at least.
Well, I mean, I could always find other things to do in that area. That area is pretty easy to, especially when it's not snowing out. You can just go park and walk around for a while. But
yeah, true.
Maybe not there unless you want to go walk into the hospital, I guess.
They got that Swanky Meyer over there, that whatever it's called. It's like a big brown box building.
Have you been in that Meyer? Is it?
I didn't go in. We kind of talked about it when we, because it's like right, the brown iron's right there, so you can see it from the from inside, and we were kind of talking about it, and I think it kind of came up that it was like overpriced, essentially. So, and when I left, I'm like, I gotta get home, I gotta be home by a certain time, so I just ended up taking off. But that was the second time I'd been to that brown iron, and yeah, I mean the food. They have pretty decent food, like all around, and lots of nice appetizers, and just had a burger or whatever. But yeah, it was, like I said, with all those taps, it's kind of nice to have all that selection.
Sure. Some other stuff going on. So you want to hear some fun rumors and things that I heard about this week aside from beer?
Yeah, sure.
This one, I heard this, and I really hope this is true, even though I can find absolutely nothing to support it. The only reason why I'm even bringing it up is because someone with a blue check mark put it up as fact. And even though I can't find anything on it, apparently there is some level of rumor that Billie Eilish, the pop star, is going to star in a remake of Sleepaway Camp. I don't know if she acts. I don't know if she's ever acted. I kind of don't care. It's such a weird series that I would just want to see it happen.
How many movies? You said we were kind of talking about this off air earlier. How many movies are in that series?
4 or 5, something like that.
Okay.
I don't really remember them past 1 because 1 has like the weirdest ending in pretty much any slasher movie that I can think of. I don't want to ruin it because I know you said you didn't really remember it.
Yeah, that's a total blind spot for me.
It's very much so a movie that's like, oh, Friday the 13th made a little bit of money. Let's see what we can do in a camp setting. And shit happens. But the idea of putting Billie Eilish in that kind of movie, take my money. I'm with it. Then it turns out, so I'm late on this. I saw that they're making a new Death Clock album, and the reason they're doing it is because we're getting a Metalocalypse movie. Apparently that was announced in November, but I just didn't see it. But do you like that show?
I've only caught a couple episodes of it. I never really got that into it. That was like late. Is that early 2000s, right? For the most part.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It was when Adult Swim was kind of in their heyday with the with the comedy. So like Adult Swim had that like run where they went into anime. Then they did like C-Lab and Aqua Teen and all those cracked out shows. And then they did
that's kind of how they started. Were with those.
I thought they started
Space
with the
Ghost
anime.
And no, I think they did have that too. But like their own original stuff really started with like C-Lab was one of the first. Yeah, Space Ghost for sure.
Yeah.
C-Lab, Harvey Birdman and Aqua Teen,
and then,
home movies, stuff like that.
Yeah, Metalocalypse was in like the second wave of that.
Right.
Which, if you ever have hung out with people in metal bands, especially, it hits so close to home. It's just a great show for that, and it's so ridiculous and so it's dumb. It is a dumb show. But the one thing Adult Swim got right is they're like, we're gonna put this on at about 2:15 in the morning, right when people are getting home from the bar, and certain things are a hell of a lot funnier at 2:15 in the morning. So I will totally watch I liked it enough that I went and paid for a ticket to go see Death Clock play a concert at Clutch Cargo's, where all they did was basically play the cartoon. It was like The Matrix. They played the cartoon on a they played a cartoon. Yeah, they played the cartoon on a big like projection screen in the theater, and then they had the band like sitting up on stage playing the music, and they just kind of clipped together a show based off what I had already seen on the cartoon. But I was more entertained by that than I was with the movie. So that's worth checking out. You a fan of The Exorcist?
I haven't. So I have a huge blind spot for a lot of movies, but there are a lot of movies that I'm really into that no one else has ever heard of. The Exorcist, I have seen The Exorcist. I have seen the first one. I think I've seen the third one. And that's where it kind of like...
That's kind of the only two that you should see at this point.
Yeah, one's like pretty scary and kind of like the start of all this thing. And then one of them is like an absurd like parody of itself. So I get that. So
the first one is like hailed as like the scariest movie of all time, and like the first couple times you see it is then you see it with your friends and it becomes this amazing satanic comedy all of a sudden. So that's kind of where I fall with it. The second one is this like clusterfuck bad shit movie that doesn't need to exist. The third one, I think the third one's called The Heretic. Maybe I'm confusing those. Third one goes back and actually makes a really good like movie that's worth watching. It has a lot of like kind of makes you think for whatever
Mhm.
that's worth. What we're getting, though, is we're getting a whole new Exorcist trilogy that's being directed by David Gordon Green. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not. I mean, if you tell me like a movie, I might say, oh yeah,
He's
okay.
doing the new Halloween series. That's the new Halloween movies that are out right now. So he did Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, which came out last year, and then Halloween Ends, which I believe is this year. That's supposed to come out. Maybe it's next year. Pretty sure it's this year, because it should be this year, because the first of this Exorcist movies is supposed to be 2023. But I'm willing to. So my gripes with Halloween Kills aside, which we'll get to that eventually, I really liked what he did with Halloween 2018. Like, it to me was the first movie since the original that actually felt like a Halloween movie. And it's not perfect by any stretch. Like, there's plenty of things. You're never going to hit the mark of the original Halloween movie, and you're never going to hit the mark of the original Exorcist movie either. But I think for the first one, he did a good job. This second one, it's like, all right, well, let's see how you bring the ship home before I really like judge. But you're not leaving me horribly excited. You picked a franchise that I'm going to watch regardless, but we'll see where it goes. If you pull it up, though, they have, and I don't know how official this is as far as the poster that they have up, but the poster they have on IMDb right now is a really, really cool Exorcist poster. Like, you don't even the reason I say I don't know how cool it is or how accurate it is, it looks like Linda Blair in
this is like the spider walk scene, right?
Yeah, right. But it's a really cool
creepy
poster.
It is. That's cool.
And that kind of says, like, all right, is this gonna be like Psycho, where they remade it almost shot for shot, or is this gonna be his spin on it? I don't know. I'm interested enough to give it a try. And again, that poster that they have up right now, you could almost throw that up and say, I think it's from the original movie, and it would look just as good. It's cooler than I don't want to say it's cooler than, but it's definitely a better visual than the iconic
the lamppost and the light and everything. The priest with the overcoat and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's his birthday today too. That priest.
Isn't he dead?
I guess so. He should be.
Happy birthday!
I don't know. I saw it all over socials today. So,
this has 3 people or 4 people on the cast list. Ellen Burstyn's one.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if a lot of it's like quote unquote archival footage, or not to totally change the subject, but this poster makes me think of, like, they announced that Bruce Willis has aphasia and he won't be acting in X, Y, and Z. And he's been in commercials. He was a big commercial guy in Europe, in non-English speaking countries. And there was I want to say it was Russia, but I don't think it was Russia. He was in a commercial where he was actually deep faked. Like, his head was deep faked on another actor's body to kind of like whatever. The whole scene looked kind of green screen, and that'd be really crazy. I think I don't know if the technology's there quite yet to make a whole movie with someone deep faked, but it'd be crazy to have this new one with 12-year-old Linda Blair deep faked on her original, like on somebody else's body for her original role, but like you said, a shot for shot kind of deal. That'd be nuts.
I would think if you were going to doing it in, because I mean, she's in pretty heavy makeup for the majority of like the parts where she's really zooing out.
Right.
But I mean, if you look at like Rogue One, they did like that movie has Peter Cushing in it. Dude's been dead for like a decade.
Yeah, but he was totally CG in that movie. That's like a Jar Jar Binks.
Look at how Carrie Fisher looked in that movie. Like, she looked.
Yeah, but it's Uncanny Valley kind of weird stuff. Like, it kind of looks like a real person, but it almost is too creepy to be real, But
that was also what, like 10, 15 years ago at this point?
How Rogue One is probably like 5 to.
No, it's got to be more than that.
No, this is 2022, right? I had to think about what year it is. It's probably 2017, 2018, still, right? Rogue One.
With how fast that technology moves, I wouldn't be surprised if you can make that look really good at this point.
No, I don't know. I think there's still too much in special effects that don't hold up like a year, 2 years after something comes out, and that's not necessarily because it's advanced so much, just because wasn't that good to begin with. Yeah, maybe.
There's that. I don't know. I think with a genre movie, though, doing something like that where you're talking about a demon, basically,
Yeah.
I think it would be easier to pull off than if it was Citizen Kane or something like that.
We want to move on to the second beer that we got.
Yeah. All right, so 313 is a New England style IPA. It is at 6.2% ABV and brewed with all grown Michigan hops. It is I don't know if it's collaboration or sponsored by, but it's a Detroit Pistons beer, so it's got a really cool label on the can. I don't really like basketball, but I like this like black on black, like matted out look that they have on there.
Yeah, it's super murdered out, and this is like a official partnership with the Detroit Pistons. This is available at their games, and I think D Up is as well, which is a Kolsch with what, lemon and lime, right?
Lime for sure. I think it's lime and like honey or something like that. But I like D Up quite a bit. I can't read the date on this because it's 10th maybe.
Oh yeah, mine's March.
It's so murdered out that it's hard to read.
Mine might be March 31st, 2022.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like.
I think mine says March 10th. Okay. I can barely read it, so I could be wrong.
Let me get that pop on the on mic here. Oh, popped it too hard.
No such thing.
Got a little spray back.
I got it on my keyboard that's issued by work, so whenever that gets returned, like, is there beer in this?
No.
I'm not employed here anymore, so yeah, sure.
You're imagining things. Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm just really interested to see how this turns out. Like you said, it's at 6.2%. We both know that sometimes lower ABV beers can be a little low on the taste factor as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much of a flavor this has.
It is definitely hazy.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's got a kind of pale
it almost
yellow,
looks like pineapple juice. It's not
or
filtered.
grapefruit juice or something.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of light color to it. It's not super orangey.
It's not a very strong nose.
It's got like a grapefruit citrus kind of aroma.
I'd say more pineapple. Yeah, I'm not using the right kind of glass for this. I just have a pint glass, but
I just have a glass. Glasses are glass to me.
It's pretty nice though.
Yeah, it's mild. It's kind of smooth. A little bit of grapefruit. I feel like I'm getting a little bit of pineapple out of the flavor itself.
I'm getting tropical fruits, pineapple for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Probably some citrus. I'm sure there's some orange in there or something like that. I'm not really getting grapefruit. I'm not getting that tartness out of it. More sweet out of it. Maybe it will open up kind of like the other one did. It's very like a light and fluffy type mouthfeel. It's not heavy at all. I don't feel like this is going to sit very heavy on you either, which is also a good thing.
Yeah, it kind of has like a subtle like candied citrus kind of flavor. You get the tropical, but that too.
Do you have you ever had dried out like dehydrated pineapple? It's kind of what it tastes like, is dehydrated pineapple.
That's not bad. That's one that you could definitely toss back a few of these.
Yeah, definitely a good summer beer too. Yeah, sun, beach, hoops, I guess.
Sweat.
Yeah. Gym shorts.
That's what I think about when you say all those things.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm a winter guy.
Yeah, same. I mean, I don't mind the summer, but I definitely enjoy the winter a lot more.
I mean, ideally for me, I want it to be like 50 degrees and overcast all the time. Like that's, if I can wear a hooded sweatshirt and shorts every day, that's perfect. Going past The Exorcist, I also heard that Willem Dafoe is going to play Nosferatu again. So they're doing another Nosferatu. I'm assuming this one, it looks like it's more of a remake of the original, where the one he did with John Malkovich, the Shadow of the Vampire, was more of like a influenced by, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a behind the scenes kind of telling of the story of making the movie.
This one though is directed by Robert Eggers, and I don't think I've seen any of his movies, but he directed that new Nick Cage movie, which I don't know what it's about, but it's Nick Cage looking like he's just chewing everything in sight, so I want to see it.
That's the one where he kind of plays himself, or a character that's very much modeled after himself.
Yes, and that is 100% a movie that I want to go see. So,
what's the last prior to this? I mean, we haven't seen this yet, but what's the last Nick Cage movie you've seen?
Last movie, I was going to say History of Swear Words, but that was not a movie. See, here's the thing: I watch pretty much everything that Nick Cage does because I love Nick Cage because he's just Nick Cage. The problem is most of his stuff really for about 2 decades now. It's just so like I watch it, I say that's dumb, and then I move on. It doesn't really stick the same way. He hasn't had if you talk, when I think Nick Cage, like I prefer to think of like Con Air and The Rock and Face Off and the movies where he, Leaving Las Vegas, it's another great one. Those movies where if they're on, you just leave it because it's Nick Cage and you should. But I can't think of one that like even a title one that he was in recently that really
you could remember the title for.
Right.
I sat down for about maybe a week, watched Prisoners of the Ghostland, where he's like basically a prisoner who gets, I don't know, roped into rescuing somebody. It's so throwaway at this point. You know, I can't remember what it is. And then I saw Mandy a couple years back, and I know he did like, I don't know, about 50 movies in between Mandy and Prisoners of the Ghostland. And I saw Willy's Wonderland, where he plays the janitor of that. It's kind of like a Five Nights at Freddy's kind of deal. And he's trying to get out of this or clean up this, like a Chuck E. Cheese kind of place that's been, I don't know, possessed. All the people were pedophiles, and they're, you know, possessed by demons of the past pedophiles. That was actually okay. I mean, again, kind of throwaway, but kind of silly at the same time. But yeah, the new one, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and he plays Nick Cage, which is Nick Cage, where he spells his Nic.
So I'm looking at Nick Cage's, I'm just going to call him Nick like I know him. His IMDb. The last thing I watched that I remember was Pig, which is basically him looking for his pig through a whole movie. It was not very memorable, but it's Nick Cage.
He got like nominated for some kind of, not a Razzie, but like I don't want to say an Oscar, but something, didn't he, for that?
I don't know.
Or the movie did, I thought.
It might have. I don't know. I didn't think it was that good. Then I remember watching Kill Chain, but I can't remember anything about it other than it had some violence in it. But no, Nick Cage is just one of those, he's the last of that kind of actor where it's like, oh, I'm going to play a guy on PCP and Coke. Well, I better go get a bunch of PCP and Coke and make sure that I can do this
super
right.
Hardcore method acting. Yeah, right. For sure.
And more often than not, he's at least entertaining for one watch. And last little like tidbit that I found here over the last week that seems like it's worth mentioning. So we talked about Chopping Mall a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Did you see that they're making a Spirit Halloween movie?
No.
So this got announced today, and it's actually something I'm like, I better jot this down because it's a Spirit Halloween movie, and it's starring Christopher Lloyd and Rachel Lee Cook.
Okay.
So you got Doc Brown and Josie and the Pussycats.
I think more about her from her Lifetime resume, her Lifetime movie resume. But,
I remember when I was in high school, I thought she was gorgeous, and then she just kind of disappeared, and I found other women to, stare at.
Yeah, ogle after.
Right. So basically, I had the premise is pretty great. I'm going to read this like word for word because it's worth it. When a new Spirit Halloween store appears in a deserted strip mall, 3 middle school friends who think they've outgrown trick-or-treating make a dare to spend a night locked inside the store on Halloween night. But they soon find out the store is haunted by an angry evil spirit who has possessed the creepy animatronic characters. The kids embark on a thrilling, spooky adventure in order to survive the night and avoid becoming possessed themselves. So this is a movie that's being geared at like kids for Halloween, so
okay.
Which actually is good. Like I don't want to say I feel bad for kids because there's not a lot of good like kids Halloween movies, but like I still like Ernest Scared Stupid because it's a good kids Halloween movie. There's a lot of good movies like that just you don't see that type of thing come out. But I read that, I'm like, so this is like the PG version of Chopping Mall with the Spirit Halloween store and Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, kind of.
So
I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but that makes sense.
When they said it was 3 kids who locked themselves in a store to go have some fun, I was like, so I just watched this movie recently.
Not too long ago, actually. It was a movie called Chopping Mall. These really cool guys on this podcast that I listen to religiously talked about it.
Right. I hope that they have a Killbot animatronic inside of the Spirit Halloween story because that would just be amazing.
My daughter would not. I think this is one of the first years, but like Spirit Halloween, she wouldn't do because of she would avoid like the animatronic stuff. She would be so afraid of that stuff that we couldn't, around Halloween time, we couldn't go into Lowe's or even Home Depot where they had all those things set up, the display, because she'd be so freaked out by them. She's 11.
I mean, if she's 11, I guess that's a pass. But I start for years. As soon as like August rolls around, I'm like, Spirit open yet? Can I go in there? Because I go to a store. There's a store in I don't remember what the city they're in. They're called Screamers.
Okay.
And it's they call themselves a costume shop, but it's really a Screamers. They're in Clinton Township on Gratiot, but it's really like a in-depth like Halloween / like spooky stuff store that's open year round. They do have like 2 or 3 aisles of costumes in there. Like, I have not been in there at Halloween time. I've only gone in there like at Christmas time, like a normal human. But they have a ton of like horror collectible stuff. Lots. I mentioned, I think before, that I'm working on remodeling my basement, and I'm going to do a lot of like horror movie themed stuff down there. So it's not just beer stuff down there. So I've been looking for, posters and stuff like that basements are big. You got a lot of wall to fill.
Yeah.
So they got a lot of stuff like that, a lot of decor, a lot of cardboard cutouts, a lot of stuff screaming at you as soon as you walk in there. But it's a really cool spot. I just wish it wasn't like a 35-minute drive to get over there.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter used to be afraid of the Mr. Roof commercials with the dancing nail as a child. So, I mean, this is not new to me. Like I totally.
Did I miss when you were a practicing Catholic and nails were something to be afraid of?
No, I don't know. Just something about that. I mean, I gotta admit that nails just kind of look creepy.
I mean, now that you say it like that, I can see it, but I never really thought of it before.
She used to peer around the corner at the commercial. Like, is it over? Yeah, it's over. Okay. And she'd come back. Like, she would leave the room, Didn't want to be in any kind of periphery to this dancing nail with a dirt stash for whatever reason. I have no idea.
It's going to be funny when she hits her rebellious goth phase and all she wants to do is watch like Strangeland over and over again or something like that.
I always had like, I don't know, the thoughts of like, oh yeah, my kids and they get older. I mean, I love crappy horror movies. I love B movies. I love just kind of stuff that's, my kind of specialty and all that stuff is like the 80s kind of stuff that's just kind of creepy enough, like Return of the Living Dead or, it's not necessarily scary, but it just has this, I think being shot on film has a lot to do with it. Like, kind of behind the scenes for this, we have our Trello board set up and we populate it with all the things that we wanted to talk about, all the different movies or the shows or whatever. And one of the first things that I put on there is Ripley's Believe It or Not from 1982. And it's a good show. I think it's a good show, but it's funny to watch it now. And you see all the stuff that they talk about. And some of it's kind of like, I find myself watching it and I'll research all the stuff they're talking about, or I'll have like 50 tabs of my browser open while I'm watching it for all the different things they talk about to see if it's been like debunked or if it's like something that's not even around anymore. One of the episodes I watched was about like windmills, like how crazy it is, or that it would be when they start using windmills to harness the power of the wind for electricity. But I think because it's PG or it's G rated, actually, there's no gore, there's nothing really scary, but it's just the way that it's shot. There's something about even low budget effects being shot on film that just have that kind of creepy, kind of just unsettling kind of look to them or kind of feeling to them. And I always thought, like, my kids get old enough, this is going to be something that I'm going to love to do. They might have friends over for a sleepover and I'll be the cool dad because we'll watch Brain Damage, or we'll watch, I don't know, some other, ridiculously not scary movie at all. And I'm trying to think of like there's all these like titles floating around in my head, but I can't pick out.
High.
Yeah, exactly. Like a trauma thing where it's like, it's not scary. It's funny, but it's unsettling at the same time, just because it's the way it's filmed. Like, something about it just has this really kind of creepy. I feel like once we got out of the 80s and some of the 90s and we start going more towards digital stuff, the movies just don't capture that same kind of suspense or like thrill that was there in these things. But and now I know that they're older and they have personalities and they have their own likes and stuff, they want nothing to do with any of the old garbage that I watch or watched.
it's funny because, like, you know, that whole progression of the horror genre, it's gone from practical effects and making like part of why I got into B movies and horror movies and stuff like that is because so much of that someone took the time to make whatever that monstrosity is that I'm watching. It's not and obviously there's some in these movies, but you're not just watching something that was animated on a computer. And there's a place for that. Like, I'm not saying that I can't watch a movie with CG in it. Like, it's better now than it was, but it's never going to be like watching, you know, you mentioned Return of the Living Dead. Like, you imagine if they tried to make Tarman now, he would
just
look
be
like
some CG like Jar Jar Binks garbage.
Yeah, and that just totally takes all the fun out of it. Or, you know, even the stuff like, I mean, and again, we mentioned Dawn of the Dead before, but like the original is a straight up masterpiece, especially if you think of what it did to propel that genre from an effects standpoint. We saw the remake of it, and I actually like that remake. I think that's a pretty good movie, but the effects are not anywhere near to what they were for the original. So,
I mean, the thing I always, when I think of Dawn of the Dead, I always go back to that stupid zombie climbing the boxes and the helicopter cutting the top of the head. Like, how did they do that? Like, what crazy ass stunt person was like, you know what? I'm going to climb the box. I'm going to let something cut the just like a few inches, even just like 3 inches above your head, like something flying by and cutting your, and so the blood like rolls over the edge. It's like, yeah, I'm good.
There's I've seen videos on, I can't remember how they did it now, but I've seen videos on how they've done that, how they did that stunt. I know part of it is there's a large prosthetic on top of his head that's supposed to go, but how quick could that go wrong?
Right.
So, right. But yeah, I mean, that whole movie, like, it's funny. Whenever I go back to that, the first thing I usually go to is the Hare Krishna zombie, and you don't even see Hare Krishnas now. But
yeah,
I mean, that movie.
The thing that will always stick out in my mind about that movie is the in the apartment or in the projects or whatever scene when that zombie comes and bites and takes that big chunk out of whoever's shoulder. It's like, it just looks like raw hamburger. That's just, it's, you know, that it's not real, you know, obviously it's not real, but it's just so kind of unsettling. I think it's like, you know, the effects, the makeup, the whole kind of scene setup, the reactions of the people doing it. I feel like with CG, you just won't ever capture that. Like, I watched, what's the one that Zack Snyder did for Netflix? Army of the Dead? With Batista, Dave Batista. Yeah. It's just like, I mean, yeah, you can have a zillion zombies on screen or whatever, but it's just not the same because you have that like real, like even more suspension of disbelief, you know?
I wanted to like that movie because like I said, I did like his remake of Dawn of the Dead. I thought that was a movie that I was, you know, when you talk about, because nerds do this, you can't remake things without them being pissed off for whatever reason. Yeah. You know, I'm sure for every one person, like I mentioned Halloween 2018, like, and how I like that. I could call a friend right now that I know hates that movie and just listen to him rant about it, because that's the territory that you're in when you remake some of these movies or make sequels to them. For a guy who did such a good job with the remake of Dawn of the Dead, forgetting the sequels of like the Day of the Dead, the 2 Day of the Dead remakes that came out right after it that were terrible. Him going back to that, especially after Sucker Punch and the whole DC monstrosity and, you know, really everything else that his career became. I don't remember if 300 was before or after Dawn of the Dead, but really everything aside.
I think it was after. Yeah, I mean, that was the pinnacle. Dawn of the Dead was the pinnacle of his career. Yeah, I mean, he got bigger projects than that, but I think that that's been the best thing that he's done.
I like 300 too. I thought that was a pretty good movie. It doesn't hold up well. Like watching it a second time, like there's a lot of dumb shit in this movie. But I remember seeing it back when I was still not lazy enough to go to the gym, like one of the gyms I went to, they just played that movie on a fucking loop the whole time when it came out. I'm like, that makes sense. I'm not sure it makes me want to work out. It kind of gives me like false hope, but you know, that makes sense. But I mean, he's a director that he's got his hits and he's got his terrible things too. So seeing him go back to a genre film when that came out, I was on board. I was ready to give it a chance and hope like it would. I was like, the idea of like a zombie movie in Vegas, I mean, that seems like it should work pretty well. There's a lot, and the things that he does well in that movie, we can probably go into this more in depth at a future point, but the things he does well in that movie, they do work pretty well. Like the cinematography in that movie is great, but there's so much in that movie that it's just like, well, that looks dumb. That looks dumb. I hate this character. I don't understand why we can't have horror movies now where you have at least one or two characters that you like.
Yeah, likable characters would go a long way. We'll have to add Army to the Dead to the Trello board, and then we'll have to talk about that one. It might be actually be a good idea to watch something that's available via streaming, because I know that with Matrix, I mean, you could do it on HBO or whatever, but it's kind of limited. But something on Netflix might be a good idea because there's so many more people that have Netflix or access to watch those movies.
Shopping Mall is on Tubi, and Tubi is free.
That's true. I mean, it's on imdb.com. There's several places you can watch it, so it's not inaccessible.
But no, we could do a movie like that sooner than later. I don't know what we're going to do next, so I don't have a problem with that. I don't know if I want to watch it again right now, but
yeah, I watched it when it first came out, but not since. So I can't remember hating it too much, but that doesn't mean that,
I don't remember hating it, but I don't remember feeling like I wanted to watch it a whole lot again either. So
right.
I remember getting through it. I'm like, all right. What else have you been watching this week?
I actually just watched this the other day. I watched the Jimmy Savile documentary on Netflix. It's like the British horror story. I don't know if you're familiar with Jimmy Savile or not. He was the
rapey guy.
Yeah, he was in Britain. Yeah. He was like a DJ and a TV host, a Top of the Pops, like kind of like a Dick Clark kind of personality. Mm-hmm. He had a children's show that he would do where Jimmy will fix it, and some kids would write in, and he would do things like, to help. It's kind of like, I mean, not to minimize it, but it would be like Make-A-Wish, but for non-sick kids, right? So
right,
stuff like that. I want to meet so and so. I want to be a police officer, and they kind of go into basically. Long story short, he was in the limelight from like the 50s to about 2000, mid 2000s until he passed in like 2013. And they think in that span of time, he was committed like hundreds of probably 1,000, different offenses against children, young girls specifically, and sometimes young boys as well, which a lot of the accusations came and a lot of the kind of investigation came after his death. And I think 2013 is when he passed. So on Netflix, there's a 2-part documentary that kind of goes into the first part's kind of like, yeah, this guy's kind of creepy, but, he seems rather innocent. He always did like nice things. He worked at a hospital. He was a porter, even while he was probably one of the most famous people in Britain with like an audience of, 40 million people weekly. And how, they start to kind of suspect that he's doing these things, or people are kind of like, it's kind of hushed tones. And I remember they don't mention it in the documentary, but Johnny Rotten is one of the people that kind of are the first people to, publicly say like, yeah, I heard this guy's a pedophile, kind of like
we can't give Johnny Rotten credit. He was a heroin addict. So,
okay. But,
I don't like the Sex Pistols, but I would give Johnny Rotten credit. So,
yeah, but it's just that's not, like I said, it's not mentioned in the documentary, but it was interesting. I knew like a lot about it. I remember, I don't know if you know who Louis Theroux is, but he's like a British, kind of like a documentarian. He'll do things like he did a thing with the Westboro Baptist Church, Fred Phelps and all that stuff. He did like an inside kind of documentary with them. It's documentary, but he kind of lives with these people to kind of get their story and whatnot. He did a thing with Jimmy Savile like in 2000, I think it was like 2010 or 2003, like, but I know that's a big wide swath of time, but he did a thing before with him, and he kind of addresses some of the things. And I was reading, they don't never talk to him in this documentary, but I remembered seeing a documentary with him kind of, it's like, I forgot what it's called. It's like My Life with Jimmy or something. And it's, he lived with them or sat around with them for a week or something and filmed on the stuff and asked questions, because there was always rumors kind of going around. But it was just a really interesting documentary and something I already kind of knew about, but it was, nice, not nice, but it was good to see that there's another kind of concerted effort to kind of get the story out there.
My wife was watching that this morning. I came into it somewhere in the second episode. I watched about maybe 45 minutes of it, and I had just finished that Hugh Hefner like miniseries that was on TV.
Oh yeah, I've heard a lot about that, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, after that I was like, I don't need any more like rapey guys for a minute.
I don't need any more creeps right now. I'm good.
Not that kind of creep anyway. Yeah. So yeah, I went the polar opposite of that. I had a little bit of an amorphous blob type week. Early in the week, I watched the 1988 remake of The Blob.
That's a good one. That's one of my favorites.
It holds up really well, surprisingly. And I know that's a lot of weird effects in that one, but that one holds up really well. And then I followed that up with one of them that's on our Trello board. I watched The Stuff, which is similar type of concept, a little bit goofier and a little bit more right from the gate. You're like, fucking really? But really entertaining. I mean, if you want a good like double feature, that's like you could do a whole hell of a lot worse than putting those two together.
Yeah, The Blob was the first one when I started the B-movie blog that I did. That was like I don't know how I found out about some of these movies, but I had just kind of heard like, this is a really weird movie.
I got lucky when I was a kid. I grew up in an area where I could walk through my neighborhood and get to the video store without having to cross any main roads. So my parents were cool with it. And the guy who owned the video store was friends with my parents. So he kind of knew he could rent me, as long as it wasn't porn, he could rent it to me and wouldn't get like yelled at. So I started getting into that stuff. Like this spot, like the first one I remember renting was Evil Dead 2, because it had that freaky like skull with the like bugged out eyes on it. And I just kind of started being like, well, this box looks fucking weird. Let's see what this is.
Yeah, there's so much to be said for late 80s and looking at VHS boxes that we don't get access to seeing that anymore. It's like, that could tell you the whole movie. You could see that thing and be like, oh, this movie, like I remember The Exterminator was like one where I would see it and be like, this movie's got to be great. And I finally watched it. It was okay, but
I think it was called House, the one with the severed hand. That was one that I was always like, Sleepaway Camp, which we kind of hit on a little bit earlier, that had a great cover on it. The little Adidas shoe with a knife stabbing through it. But yeah, that's how I got into it. It's kind of how I got into music too, is I would just go to the physical media store, which doesn't exist anymore, and be like, I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna check it out. And once I realized like the stuff that was in the things that were in the horror movie section generally were more interesting to me than the stuff in the other sections. I'd like the old like you could give me an 80s or 90s action movie and I'm going to be pretty entertained with those. And comedy has its spots too, but it's that B horror movie with all the bizarre stuff. That's where I'd really go find the hidden gems and be like, I never really rented off of the new releases. I was always going to the like 3 for $3, aisle with all the weird shit in it. So
yeah, there's so many times now where, especially when I was really into watching a lot of B movies, either horror or action or whatever it is, it was just kind of like I download a lot of stuff, or I would download, I would illegally download, don't tell anybody. I would illegally download like a bunch of different things. And I would look, if the date was like past 97, I just wouldn't even download it. It's like, yeah, this probably isn't going to be good unless I knew, like I watch art house films. I watch all types of different things, B movies, action movies, just different types of stuff. But if it was like something in the action realm that the CGI was going to be too crazy, unless I heard really great things about it, I would just skip anything after like 97, basically, when they started doing more CGI and less practical stuff, because that's, you can see some of that silly stuff, practical effects that are just silly as shit and just laugh your head off, but if it's CGI, either it's going to be like Birdemic where it's going to look like just ridiculous, but the whole movie's garbage. Usually if it's got practical effects, there's some kind of redeeming quality. Something in there is like, oh, you can tell your friends, like I saw this crazy movie and this thing where the dog got, the dog, its head split open and the alien, like The Thing, basically anything out of The Thing, you could be like, this is insane.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, if you're going into the action realm, like I want the like over the top strongman who's like, the only person who's going to survive this is him and whoever his like female interest is, but who cares? Like you're going to see him, like you're going to see Arnold shoot the guy with the shotgun and have him do this like really elaborate backflip, and that means that he's dead, something like that.
And Arnold says the one liner and then it's over.
Right. But that's, I mean, again, that is entertaining to me. Like, I'd rather see something like that. Like, one of the things I've always hated is war movies because they're fucking depressing to me. And I know that a lot of those are like fictionalized stories, but war is a real thing with real consequences, and people die in that. And most of these stories are taken from, even if you're bending the truth in them to meet your story, you're taking a real story where like people's lives are ruined. I'm saying this is a guy who's like, one of my favorite movies is Goodfellas, where plenty of lives are ruined with that story. I mean, those stories, like, they just depress the hell out of me. I don't want that. I want the over the top violence in the movie, but I want it to be at the hands of like Pumpkinhead or something.
You're telling me Van Damme's Hard Target is more up your alley than like a
Easily.
1917 or something.
I want the diabetes dude riding his horse out of the fire holding a shotgun over his head, because that was Hard Target, wasn't it?
I don't know, but it sounds good. Whatever it is, I want to see it.
I'm pretty sure that was Hard Target. But yeah, Wilford Brimley is in that, and he is there's a scene where I don't remember how the explosion happens, but the entire screen is fire. Put in if you're searching, just search Wilford Brimley fire horse. It should come up. I want to say it's Hard Target, but he is just it looks like he's on a pony and he's riding away from this gigantic explosion, and it is magnificent. So
I'm looking at it right now. Yeah. Hard Target. You're right.
Yeah. See? Van Damme had its moments. He kind of screwed himself over with how he screwed up Predator, or how he screwed himself in Predator. But
because he was supposed to be in the suit, right?
Yeah, and then he was a bitch about it, basically. And then they got a dude.
He didn't want to be under a suit. He wanted to be his face to be shown.
Well, and he was mad that he couldn't. The suit was so restrictive that he couldn't do all his like ninja kicks and stuff. So they got rid of him and got like a 8 foot tall, like massive dude who could be the Predator. So
didn't need the glory.
Right. I don't know if you want to call that an action movie or a sci-fi movie, but that's one with all kinds of little stupid nuggets that are put in there, because that's one of my favorite.
I think that's a good action sci-fi. I mean, I think it's a crossover for sure.
I mean, it's got some of Arnold's best one-liners in it. Mm-hmm. So what else did I watch this week? But yeah, that was kind of the big things I hit on. I got a bunch of stuff. I keep trying to find time to sit down and watch the new Ghostbusters movie, Afterlife.
Yeah.
So I love that franchise, and I've had one night where I was like, I could probably do this, but do you ever like have a movie you want to watch, but you feel like you're kind of brain dead, and like, if I do this, it's just going to be a waste of 2 hours right now.
Yeah, you're not going to remember any of it, and you're going to be like, I need to watch it again anyways, because I don't remember a single, like a lick of anything that happens. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think I just left on like Demolition Man or something like that. I'm like, I don't have to think about this. I've watched this movie so many damn times, something like that. But I don't know. That's one that I want to, while it's still available to rent for like $5, I want to try to get to that one before they pull it and make it, you got to pay $20 to buy it or whatever. So these beers, they're great. I've yet to have a truly bad beer from Eastern Market Brewing or Ferndale Project for that matter. So, if you're listening to this, if you're still with us at this point, first, thank you. Second, if you're in the Michigan area, if you're visiting Michigan, or if you just like Michigan beer, anything you see that has Eastern Market Brewing's logo on it, it's worth picking up. It's worth your time. It always justifies the price, and they're usually pretty fairly priced too. They're definitely not a brewery that like forces you to pay $8 for every beer, which is nice in this day and age. So we both like them a lot. I don't think that's a stretch. So check them out. Head down to Eastern Market. Check out their tap room. In the meantime, while you're doing that, let them know that Dewey Pod Monster sent you. We are on the socials at Dewey Pod Monster on everything. Subscribe to us and check us out. Sean, you want to add anything?
Yeah, just if you have any email, if you have any questions, if you want to give us some feedback, you can reach us at deweypodmonster@gmail.com. That's the address for the show. You can find me at Giraffe Therapy. On YouTube, that's my primary location. I talk about Michigan beer. John's been on. We're going to do some more mandatory Michigan brewery videos. Eastern Market and Ferndale will be on the list of those breweries. So if you want to wait until you see what we have to say about it, that's cool, but it might be a little while. But yeah, you can find me and find Draft Therapy on all the social media platforms, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. And like I said, I'm primarily on YouTube.
All right, well, then we will wrap it up at this point. You guys have a good week, and we look forward to talking to you next week.